Hi, this is Bill. So on this demo, I'll be showing you how you could basically implement reliability in your integrations using the circuit breaker pattern. So the circuit breaker pattern is an architecture that gives you the ability to block a significant number of retries that fails and opens the circuit to block retries and wait for a particular grace period to ensure that unnecessary network calls are initiated during a cooling period. To fully understand the details, so let me walk you through on how I implemented the circuit breaker pattern. So eventually, what we did here, in this example, we used the incident form that on change of a description using a client script after a significant number of failures, then the service will temporarily be unavailable during calling period. Now, let us go directly to the logs. And as you can see that we are counting the number of failures. And at this example, we have limited into 3 failures. And after counting to 3, now the circuit breaker is open, blocking any request from the client side that will make any calls to the third-party application. Now, to be able to implement this, I created a table that will basically log the number of failure counts, the last failure time, and of course, the service name. Now, the circuit breaker pattern can be implemented in as a global architecture where any type of your integration gives you the ability to block any type of request, giving you to maximize and optimize the performance of your ServiceNow platform, your application, and of course, the third-party integrations. So the last failure time will be your mark during the start time of a grace period. Now, before we drill down to the details of a circuit breaker architecture, I'd like you to give you a recap of how we basically implemented from the client-side code to give you a full picture to help you initiate this implementation and best practices in your current application. So let us start with the client side. And what you see here, right on the incident table on change of a description field, now this code will apply. And as we fetch the details, we have implemented the Ajax client UI script. And eventually we have hard-coded the employee ID that will basically call the third-party API and retrieve the results. And the Ajax client basically have a send request calling the action name, the payload, and of course the callback function. And as we pass these details to our reusable UI script that calls Ajax, you will find a reusable action and a reusable payload. Now, as we receive a response from the server, now we can fully manage the network calls not to be exploited by having so many retries that exhaust the network calls from the client side to the server side, and of course, finally to the integration. Now, this Ajax client UI script calls this employee Ajax, which serve as a controller class from the view to the server-side code. Now, as we expand, we created a base Ajax processor using the base global logger to initiate and log every step of your code. And as we pass a payload to the base Ajax processor, which is basically extending the abstract Ajax processor because of its tightly coupled capabilities. So I created this class to extend the features of the abstract Ajax processor, making it reusable globally on any type of service, any type of payload, and any type of action. Now, let us move forward with the employee service. So this is where the circuit breaker starts to kick in. And as we expand this code, you will see that I have injected circuit breaker manager as an additional service, as an independent one that can be injected globally in any type of class. Now you can implement circuit breaker pattern in any integration of your code. And now as we call the business logic of the employee service, you will see if the circuit breaker is open, then it prevents any network calls or requests to the third-party application. Now, if it goes false and the grace period finishes and having a successful third-party integrations, then it will ignore this code and just continue the business logic and ensures that the counter is basically back to zero. Since we have reset the counter, now we could respond successfully to the caller and return the data as expected. Now, since the employee service calls to the third-party application using the repository pattern, you will see here, this is the full code for the third-party API that we use on this example. And to give you a full picture of the dummy API employee records, you can watch my other video that showcase how to integrate with third-party applications using ServiceNow. As you can see here, that we basically return an error message, right, if the HTTP status is not equal to 200. Assuming it is successful, it will just parse the response body and return the response as success. Now, if it's a failure, it will return an error. Now it will be captured back to the employee service. And what you will see that it will record each failure on row number 29, both showing in the system logs using the global logger and at the same time adding it to the counter on the circuit breaker logs table. Now let me show you how I created the circuit breaker manager and give you a picture on how this architecture basically works. And let me expand the code. As you can see here, you can use any type of service name. And eventually we have hard-coded the threshold up to 3 times and the grace period of waiting for the circuit breaker to be back online or to be at closed state, which is 5 minutes. Then basically it will reset and run this code. So what you will see here is like we are calling the logs table that we created and resetting it back to 0. Now, as we scroll back up, as we record the failure, we are added a counter of the existing number and we do an update until we have reached the number of 3. And now, once we reach the number of 3, then the circuit breaker will now open. Now, we added this logic on line 22 at the last failure time with a grace period of 5 minutes. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed and learned about the circuit breaker pattern. Please don't forget to like and subscribe and continuously learn JavaScript techniques, software architectural pattern using the ServiceNow platform. Thank you so much. I'll see you on my next video.